The blade rose with the morning sun over Nuremberg. In the center of the square, a 19-year-old boy stood over a condemned thief, his hands trembling on the hilt of a great sword. His name was Frantz Schmidt, and this was his first solo execution. He wasn't there by choice. Society demanded he take this life to enforce its laws, but for doing so, it would brand him and his children as outcasts, forever dishonorable. This single stroke was the beginning of a 45-year career that would see him end hundreds of lives, all meticulously recorded in a secret diary. But it's the final chapter of his story that reveals the most shocking twist of all. Welcome to the chilling world of Meister Frantz Schmidt, the man who administered death by hanging, by fire, by drowning, and by the dreaded breaking wheel. Over a career that spanned more than 4 decades, he became one of the most prolific executioners in European history. But his story, pulled from the pages of his own private journal, isn't just a gruesome list of deaths. It's the story of a man trapped between duty and dishonor, a public servant who was a social pariah, and a state-sanctioned killer who sought redemption in the most unexpected way possible. To understand Frantz Schmidt, you have to understand the cruel twist of fate that sealed his destiny. His family wasn't a line of executioners by choice, but by force. The story goes that his father, Heinrich, was a simple woodsman in the Bavarian town of Hof. One day, the local ruler, a notoriously cruel margrave, needed 3 men hanged and had no official executioner. He invoked a grim custom. He pointed into the crowd, his finger landed on Heinrich, and he ordered him to carry out the sentence. Refusing meant death. So a woodsman became a killer to save his own life. From that moment on, Heinrich and his family were tainted. In 16th century Germany, the profession of an executioner was considered dishonorable. Executioners were essential for law and order, but they were also social outcasts. Their very touch was thought to be defiling, so they were barred from churches, forbidden from entering respectable homes, and their children were excluded from guilds and most professions. They were a necessary evil, and society made sure they felt the evil part every single day. When Frantz was born in 1555, his path was set. As the son of an executioner, the stain was hereditary. He had no choice but to follow his father into the family's cursed trade, learning the grim arts of the profession out of obligation, not ambition. His first solo execution, the hanging of a thief, took place when he was 19 years old. In his journal, he noted it with cold simplicity. "Was my first execution." Those few words marked the official start of a life he never wanted, but could not escape. From 1578 until his retirement in 1617, Frantz Schmidt served as the official executioner for the imperial city of Nuremberg. In an age of brutal public justice, his workload was staggering. Across his entire career, he personally ended more than 360 lives and was responsible for flogging or maiming hundreds more. His methods were a terrifying catalog of medieval justice. Thieves were typically hanged. Murderers were often beheaded with the sword, a method considered more honorable and requiring immense skill. Schmidt prided himself on his proficiency with the blade. A botched execution could turn the crowd against the executioner with fatal consequences, so precision was a matter of professional survival. But for the most heinous crimes, there were punishments designed for maximum agony. Schmidt's hands administered burnings at the stake, though only twice in his career. And then there was the breaking wheel. Reserved for the most violent criminals, this was a horrific fate where the condemned was tied down while the executioner systematically shattered their limbs with a heavy iron bar. Schmidt's diary provides a rare and chilling first-hand account of these practices, making it an invaluable historical document. What he wrote down separates him from the shadows of history. In an era when personal diaries were rare, Schmidt kept a meticulous journal of every punishment he administered. This document, often called a hangman's diary, isn't the work of a monster glorying in his deeds. It's a stark, professional ledger. The early entries are brief, stating the name, crime, and punishment. But as Schmidt got older, his entries grew more detailed, often describing the crimes in narrative form. He recounts stories of brutal murders, desperate thefts, and tragic infanticides, almost as if to justify the grim sentence he was about to carry out. The diary reveals a man deeply concerned with order and righteousness. He shows clear disgust for crimes involving children and seems to wrestle with the fates of those who made one tragic mistake versus hardened criminals. This journal was more than just a personal record. Some historians believe Schmidt kept it as proof of a long and faithful career in service to the city, all part of a master plan to achieve something no executioner had ever managed before. Despite his vital role in Nuremberg's legal system, Frantz Schmidt lived a life of social contradiction. Financially, he was a member of the upper middle class, with a salary comparable to the city's wealthiest jurists and a large, comfortable house. Yet, he and his family were social lepers. The dishonor of his job clung to them like a shroud. He and his 7 children were outcasts, shunned by neighbors, and denied participation in the city's civic and religious life. Marriage was a constant struggle, as respectable families refused to let their children marry into the tainted bloodline of a hangman. Schmidt's own house was located on an island, physically separated from the respectable neighborhoods, a perfect metaphor for his place in society. But unlike the stereotypical drunken executioner, Schmidt did the opposite. He lived a pious, sober, and upstanding life, even taking a rare vow of sobriety. The public knew him as Meister Frantz, a title of respect for a master craftsman. He was feared for his job, but respected for his unwavering professionalism. This was the central struggle of his existence, a man who upheld the city's honor while having none of his own. The most stunning contradiction in Frantz Schmidt's life was his second career. The same hands that swung the executioner's sword also practiced the delicate art of healing. Now, this might sound bizarre, but it made a certain kind of grim sense. Through their work, executioners possessed a practical, if gruesome, knowledge of human anatomy that few doctors of the time had. Schmidt built on this, studying medical texts and herbal remedies. He became a sought-after medical consultant. By his own estimate, he held some 15,000 medical consultations in his lifetime, a staggering number that dwarfs the number of people he executed. His reputation as a healer grew to the point where, for many, it began to overshadow his work as an executioner. This duality revealed a profound complexity. He famously refused to torture accused witches, believing the frail elderly women wouldn't survive the ordeal, an act that saved their lives. He viewed his work as a healer as his true calling. The man whose day job was to perform the state's most brutal acts spent his private hours trying to mend and save. Frantz Schmidt's life is a fascinating study in contrasts, a killer who healed, an outcast who was a pillar of the legal system, a man of blood who craved honor. It forces us to ask difficult questions about justice, mercy, and what it means to be good. What do you think? Could a man like Schmidt ever truly find redemption? Let us know in the comments. And if you find these stories from the darker corners of history compelling, be sure you're subscribed for more. In 1617, Frantz Schmidt laid down his sword, but his life's work wasn't over. For years, he had lived an honorable life in a dishonorable profession. Now he would begin his final act, restoring his family's name. In 1624, the 70-year-old retired executioner petitioned the Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand II. In his plea, he told the story of how his father was forced into the trade and detailed his own lifetime of faithful service to the law. He argued that he had lived a pious life and that the stain of dishonor clung unjustly to him and his children. His petition was supported by the city council of Nuremberg, who vouched for him as a loyal servant. In an act that was truly unprecedented, the emperor granted his request. An imperial decree was issued declaring Frantz Schmidt and his descendants ehrlich, or honorable. The curse was broken. The family was freed from the hereditary shame that had defined them for 2 generations. Frantz Schmidt died in 1634 and was given a lavish funeral, buried with honor in one of Nuremberg's most prominent cemeteries, where his grave can still be seen today. He did not die a reviled hangman, but a respected citizen. His diary remains one of the most important historical documents of its kind, offering a chilling first-hand glimpse into the world of medieval crime and punishment. His story is that of a man born into darkness who spent his entire life fighting his way toward the light, ultimately rewriting his family's destiny.